Good morning, everyone. I'm always excited to share positive news about our top research institution and our incredible leadership and expertise. As many of you know, the University of Arizona is partnering with the state of Arizona to provide COVID-19 antibody tests to our heroes on the front line. Today, like I've been doing, we're going to have a conversation with one of the absolute world-renowned superstars at the university, Dr. Janko Nikolich-Žugich. Janko is the department head and professor of immunology. Janko, thank you so much for being with us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for doing this piece with me. I'm excited to talk about what we're doing. It's the time of challenge, but time of opportunity and time of excitement.
Yeah, and I know you and your colleagues working together, you've literally, since that day in March 11th, I began calling and saying, you know, I'm really concerned that we're going to ask students not to come back to campus, but we don't know how many are going to come back to campus. And when they come back, as you all know, we've got one of the top campus health organizations of any university in the country. And I wanted us to be able to have the self-determination to be able to offer tests to our students, our faculty, and our staff. And I realized that even before we got into this current situation of the low number of testing, that for the 60,000 members of our family, we needed to be able to have enough nasal swabs, test kits, to be able to test them. And I'm happy to report your colleagues across the university have all come together to make that a reality. We're producing test kits to cover our own needs, but also to provide our partner Banner Health, other hospital systems, native lands, test kits. But what you really took the lead on as a world-class immunologist is to, in parallel to these nasal swab kits, you're developing a serological blood antibody test that will be able to measure the antibody response to this incredible virus. So, Janko, try to help our audience and me understand, how is this test different from other tests and how does the test work?
So this test is testing whether we have been infected with the virus and whether our body has mounted an immune response. And it is doing so by measuring antibodies, which are antibacterial, antiviral proteins that exist in our bloodstream. The moment that we get infected with a virus, our body mounts an immune response. That starts with literally within seconds to minutes. Antibodies are a late comer to the game in some ways because it takes a little more time to form them. It takes about a week to be able to measure them. So unlike the test that we do in the nose, the nasal swab test that tells us whether the virus is there, whether we're infected by the virus, this is telling us whether the virus was there and whether our body has mounted an immune response. It by proxy also will tell us, are we likely to be immune to the virus going forward? And we can certainly discuss that some more, but we're measuring our body's reaction to the virus and not the presence of the virus in this case. So it's the measure of exposure, it's the measure of immunity.
Yeah, and so of course people are gonna, it's amazing to me that we're really leading the nation in academic institutions that are getting out there. Of course there are others who are doing this, and every institution could do this, and they will. I think we're a bellwether for this activity. But I thought that it would be good for us to have a discussion about, you know, the past MERS and SARS, which were coronaviruses, are coronaviruses. The scientific data would suggest you have immunity in the case of MERS for about a year, meaning antibody protection. If you get re-exposed, then the memory cells in your immune system will recognize, detect the virus, and kill it. In the case of SARS, more like 3 years. We don't know the answer, but if COVID-19 follows the rules of fundamental biology, I think we could, as you say, infer that there would be immunity.
Yes, we can, and we can do. We're also doing some tests, and in addition to this antibody test, which we're of course scaling up, and as we will discuss, and we want to cover a lot of people with it. On a smaller scale, we're validating it to make sure that it will have the characteristics that we expect of what we call a protective immune response. So one of the ways in which we do that is we put the antibody together with the virus, and we put it on the cells that the virus would normally infect. And if this antibody is able to block the entry of the virus inside the cells and is not going to allow it to kill the cells, then we have a very good sense that this is likely going to be a protective antibody response. And that is how we can make recommendations that both the total levels of the antibody are good and decent, and that this antibody is very highly likely to have this protective activity to protect us from the virus. And you're right, we expect that for this type of virus, this category of viruses, we will have certain length of durable immunity. How long will that be? We don't know. Likely we will need another shot of a vaccine once the vaccine becomes available. But if we get that protection for 2 years now, that buys us all the time in the world to get a good vaccine out there.
Yeah, I think that's really important. So how did we choose to do this in-house? I kind of alluded to it earlier, instead of just waiting for a commercial test.
Well, I think part of it was, we sensed very early that there's no point waiting, that this thing was upon us, and we had no choice but start working on our own, devising the test that can cover our own local and, citywide and statewide needs. And that's how it turned out. When we started making this, Deepta Bhattacharya's lab, who's an associate professor in my department, who took the lead on this and mine, we thought we're going to end up testing, I don't know, several dozen people. Right. But we knew immediately that this had the potential that you have just outlined, that it would be very important. And then as the university started closing and thinking about reopening, we needed a test to know who was exposed. And then you guys did a fantastic job talking to the state, and the governor was, had the foresight to jump into this and to understand that this would be very useful for the state. So it just mushroomed from a few dozen to hundreds of thousands now, and we're riding with it, and we understand that it's critical. The going back to what you mentioned about commercial testing, I mean, a lot of companies are trying to do this. A lot of companies are putting these micro tests, point of care, like, finger stick, this and that and the other. None of them have really scaled it to the point where we will have millions and millions, if not more, potentially, 500 million tests or so forth. We feel that our test is going to be solid, that it's going to be validated, it's going to be sensitive enough and specific enough to take care of us. When the commercial companies come down in price and come up with production, we will happily, move over. But right now, there's no time to move over. In fact, we really have to work very hard to get this testing, particularly, as you said, for the frontline healthcare workers and for first responders.
Yeah, and for our staff and our faculty who are on the front lines and doing such an incredible job. I think those are all really good points. It brings me back to my initial reaction to all of this. We're just a university, hospitals, big corporations, they're gonna have access to these point of care tests faster than us. It's gonna take time for these commercial tests to be produced, but it will be at the end of the food chain. Moreover, they're going to be expensive. Your test is solid. It's an ELISA test. We're very confident in it, and I think you even have some of these commercial kits to try to do a comparison of how your test compares to these point of care testing. But how is this going to actually roll out? My hope is you'll be ready to go in the coming weeks. And how will it practically be done?
So practically, from our two labs, which are, labs that have, Deepta's lab has 8 people, mine has 10. We're taking the test and we're handing it over to one of our premier facilities at the university, our genomic facility led by Ryan Sprisler and Michael Hammer, and they have robots and automation, and they're scaling this up. Yeah. And they have done a phenomenal job around the clock, taking, as soon as we produce something, they've been taking it up there. This is the already over this weekend, I saw some data that they produced, and it's phenomenal. It's really looking good. Yeah. And we expected in some ways. We need to finish validation over very quickly over the next couple of days. Then the plan would be to ramp this up on a larger scale to probably about nearly 5,000 people that we're going to capture from different groups to see how is the first step up, from about 50 people going to go to about 5,000. And eventually the goal is to be able to test 5,000 or more people per day. Yeah, and that is where we want to go. And we will be there, as you said, in a couple of weeks. It sounds ambitious, but I know we can do it. And I'm very encouraged by, so many people have worked so hard behind the scenes, folks from the labs, many names, just like to briefly credit Tyler Ripberger, Rachel Wong, General Lob, and Makiko Watanabe from mine and Deepta's labs. They've been really on this all the time, growing the virus, getting the assays, growing the protein. It's been very rewarding also that collaboration across campus has been phenomenal, and collaboration with our external colleagues. We've got some protocols from Mount Sinai. They were ahead of us in this. We've got some, viral protein initially from WashU in St. Louis from our colleagues. I mean, it's just so rewarding to see science doing what it's supposed to do and medicine doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, that is just tremendous. And then just the logistics of having to set up blood draw stations, barcode, information systems, get the results back to our students, faculty, staff, first responders, healthcare workers. I mean, I couldn't be more proud of the University of Arizona and all the work we're doing. Well, Janko, thank you for joining me today. I'd be up for it. I know the governor of New York has a daily update. Once we started getting some results back from these tests, your name is difficult for a lot of us to pronounce, but everybody throughout the world knows you as Janko, and you're our Fauci. And so I just can't thank you enough for all the work you're doing. And certainly it takes a whole team of people and logistics and infrastructure and people working literally around the clock to make this a reality. And like I said before, I think we're going to be an example for the rest of the country, at least on university campuses to follow, because it's going to be important for us to test. If we have any hope of bringing people back on campus in the fall, which we certainly want to do. So thank you to you, to your team for pivoting, using your incredible immunologic and public health and logistical experience and everyone involved to make this a reality.
I'm very honored and privileged to be able to contribute. And again, as you said, like the whole of health science is led by Michael Dake. And he quarterbacked this effort in terms of what you said, like the logistics and, all of the blood draws and everything else. And, our dean, Mike Abecasis, all of them and have done, and across, all of the colleges of the health sciences have done a phenomenal job across campus making this possible. And I'm sure we will be able to get this done. As you said, testing is the key. Testing is the only way we can win the battle.
I do believe, Janko, that we need to have, if not daily, but weekly updates, and we could do this by live Zoom so that people could tune in. My hope is we're going to be able to get tested, that we'll have antibodies, and we can do this together with all of our videographers and production crew. But until then, I want to wish everyone a good start to our week on Monday. Always a lot of work to do. And until I see you again with another university leader, please stay safe. Please stay in isolation. And as always, bear down.